Legendary Motorcar started out of a small single-car garage in 1985. I've been through the ups and downs of the collector car market. I've been lucky enough to turn my passion into my business. My team shares that same passion, and together we buy, sell, restore, and race some of the greatest cars on the planet. I'm Peter Clute, and this is Legendary Motorcar. You know, race cars are an interesting thing. Gary's off buying a new race car because he wants to go faster. He thinks that the old car isn't as good as the new car. He's got budget to go out and get a new piece. And it was the same in the 60s when Ferrari was racing cars like the 206 SP or the privateers were buying those cars. The only reason they bought them is they thought they were faster than their last car. So when the 206 SP that we have today found its way to Pierre Bardenon as a burnt car after a race incident, that car was basically worthless. Today it's worth millions of dollars as long as we can prove that the chassis is the original chassis. Now what's interesting is during the 90s, 80s and 90s, cars like Porsches and Ferraris and some of the cars that raced over in Europe, they were expensive cars, brand new, and people actually expected them to hold their value, sometimes go up in value depending on the history. So cars like the GT2 Evo that we bought, it was an expensive car new, it was an expensive car to buy used, and hopefully it becomes a more valuable car in the future. It'll be interesting to see, because race cars really were a tool to be used, how that pans out in the long term. Over the last couple of years, we've taken the 206 to some concourses, we've taken it to the track, we've done some repairs to the car, we've brought it up in condition and sort of track usability. So the car is really, from an aesthetics point of view, a beautifully restored car that mechanically is ready to go run on the track. We want to make sure that the history is extremely clear on this car. Yes, the car had trauma, yes, the car burned, but it does have the original chassis, and we want to make sure that we can prove it, and here's how. The day Cupolini was picking up the burnt 206, Marcel Massini was there and took photographs. We're going to use those photographs to authenticate the car.
For sure, it is absolutely important to do as much research as possible, especially in such a case, because there has been so much nonsense published about certain cars. And when these things happen, it is very important to spend a little more money, do more research, fly out, go and inspect the car physically. In this particular case, and I'm very happy that we were able to do that, we had the photographs to physically examine the car, check all the details.
Now basically what we're looking at is we are looking the holes here, right, on this tube. You know, this piece of metal would wrap around. Normally it would not wrap around that much, but nobody would recreate holes on such a tube. So this for sure is the original tube.
Marcel's flown in from Switzerland to authenticate the 206 SP. Gary's getting a great education hanging out with him for a couple of days.
What we have here is a really nice shot showing the details here in the center frame, right, with the selector here, and we can clearly see here these 2 points here. Yep. We have exactly that here and that here, and nobody would recreate these items
for no reason.
For no reason, makes absolutely no sense. One of the things we spoke about is this little piece here. Of course, this piece is new. Yep. But the actual, how do you call it, the holder bracket, yeah, where it goes into it is old, and the same story here. In addition to that, what is really most fascinating is the bracket down here. Yep. For the exhaust mounting. Mm-hmm. That's exactly the piece as it used to be.
So no one would recreate that piece, the shape that it's in?
No way. They would do it in a different configuration. They would do it in a different way. That's exactly as it was made.
When Marcel flew out to authenticate the 206, he told me, we can't change history and the car won't lie. One of the world's most renowned Ferrari experts, Marcel Massini, is here to look over the 206 SP.
We really went through every frame piece and welding stuff and rivets and small damages, traces of earlier damage. The chassis frame is absolutely exactly as it used to be. This is the original frame. Yes, it has a new body. You have to admit that. It's a competition Ferrari. So many Ferraris over these years, especially the competition cars, had damages. They were rebodied partially or even completely. So I would not consider that a big issue. I have had cases where a car had a completely new chassis, and in such a case I have to write that in my report. Fortunately with 026 this is not the case. It's the real thing, and this is good. We cannot recreate history and we should not rewrite history, of course. So yes, certain parts are new, but the basis, the heart, the frame is genuine.
The decision's been made to sell the 206, so we're going to take it to Pebble Beach, we're going to take it to Gooding, and we're going to sell the car no reserve. It's one of those cars that people have to know they're going to get it bought, and we look at it and say, we've done our best with the research, we've got a great binder now on the real history of the car, and the car speaks for itself, good and bad. Most of these cars had trauma. This car obviously did as well, but it is the original chassis, so it'll be interesting to see what it brings. And ultimately, the car is worth what somebody will pay for it. We're taking the Ferrari 206 SP to Pebble Beach. What was interesting as I was walking around is to see how many race cars are all of a sudden becoming collectible cars. The 206 is going to be an interesting car. The car has the story. The car obviously had trauma at the Nürburgring when it burned. But the important thing is bringing out the history and saying, listen, this car does have the original chassis. When you dissect what it is and look at it logically, there's a lot of race cars that don't have their original engines, that don't have the original bodies. So to me, the most important thing is the chassis. The problem is overcoming the story. And a lot of people today are saying, I want the best, I want something without a story. So now, how does it affect it? Is it half the money? Is it a third of the money? Or do you get two guys that say, hey, I'll pay, I don't think it's worth that much less. It's an interesting car, and I think it'll be interesting to see what it does.
Bring up the Dino, lot number 34, 1966 Ferrari 206 S Dino Spider, one of just 18 examples originally built, unbroken and undisputed provenance, painstakingly examined and authenticated by Marcel Massini, fantastic Filippinetti racing team history, one of the most beautiful sports racing cars of the era.
Well, one man loved this car so much he kept buying it, didn't he?
He did.
He owned it 3 times.
He owned it 3 times.
Where would you like to start, ladies and gentlemen? Do you like? I suppose the logical thing is to just start at $1 million. Thank you.
All right.
1 million. 1.1 now. 1 million, I've started.
It's always a good sign when the auctioneer opens up at $1 million and it gets jumped on right away.
1.1 would you like? 1.1. 1.2. 1.2, Scott. 1.2 with my wife. 1.2. 1.3. 1.3. 1.3. 1.4. 1.4 now. 1.4. 1.5. 1.5. 1.6. 1.6, Eric. 1.6. 1.7. 1.7. 1.8. 1.8 now.
It'd be really nice if the car went above $2 million.
1.75, David, got you. 1.75. 1.8 now, sir. 1.8. 1.8. 1.85. 1.8. 1.85, thank you, Eric. 1.85. 1.9. 1.9. 1.95. Bids against you. 1. Well, yes, thank you. Was that 2 million? It was. Same to you. 2 million. 2 million. 2.1, sir. 2.1. Madam, give him a nudge. 2.1. 2.1. 2.2. 2.2 now, sir.
Selling the car.
We are indeed selling the car, Eric. Tell your man at 2.2. $2.1 million in the corner. For the first time, ladies and gentlemen, at $2.1 million. For the second time, at $2.1 million. For the third and the last time, I sell at $2.1 million. All done. Sold, sir, your car. Congratulations.
All right, congratulations.
2.1 million.
As the world of collector cars matures, a lot of the people are saying, I want the best, I want no stories. And let's face it, when it comes to multi-million-dollar cars, it's very hard to say, hey, this car, is a great car, but. And the car really is, and I think at what the fella paid for the car, he got tremendous value. I'll give David credit. I mean, he spent a lot of time with some people. He went over all of the material. They had the archive set up, and I know that those guys worked really hard to get the people out here. And then it comes down to, are there two people that want it? And we saw on a couple of cars where there was, and it just brought incredible amounts of money. Ultimately, race cars are an interesting study. Any way you slice it, the cars are what they are. With race cars, you cannot change the history. It just comes down to what somebody will pay.